All right, ready to dive in? We're tackling Reddit's No Stupid Questions.
Oh, I love this one.
It's that place where, like, any question, no matter how out there, is fair game. And we've got some of the most upvoted posts ready to go.
You know what I find so interesting about this subreddit? Millions of people,
Eh.
millions, are in there asking questions. It really speaks to that need we all have to connect to know we're not alone, even if it's about, like, I don't know, our weirdest thoughts.
It's like this giant anonymous therapy session, right?
Literally.
So we've grouped these burning questions into a few themes. First up, relationships and intimacy. And some of these posts, oh boy, they were wild. Like
Juice.
straight out of someone's secret diary. For example, one question that got a ton of upvotes was, women who can't move after sex, is that a real thing? And you might laugh, but the number of people invested in this question, there's something there.
It could be, right. It could be about worrying about how you perform sexually or like how your partner might see it.
Or even just like what's normal, right? Because we get these images from media and stuff.
Totally. And speaking of it, another one was about how realistic are those, enthusiastic noises in adult films. And like part of me is like, okay, that's funny, but also people are trying to figure out, is that what it's really like?
Trying to separate fact from fiction, even there.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, one more from this theme because it's just wow. So someone asked about glazing another person during let's just say a particular act, and it's like it's so specific, but it got so many people talking.
It makes you think about boundaries, doesn't it?
Cool.
What's going too far, even in a private moment, people are looking for that line,
It's true, and even if they're not going to ask their partner, they'll ask Reddit.
anonymously at least.
Right. And then on a totally different note, we have posts where you see the potential for like real hurt in relationships. Like one user walked in on their mom cheating and they just wanted to erase that image from their brain.
Oh, that's heavy. It reminds you that even in a place for curiosity, you're also going to find real pain, real confusion that people are working through.
Definitely takes it to a deeper level.
Yeah.
Okay, ready to switch gears a bit. Our next theme is all those big questions about life, death, the whole shebang. We're calling it the human experience and beyond.
Oh, here come the existential questions.
Yeah.
Love it.
It's like Reddit turns into this philosophy class all of a sudden.
And sometimes those questions come out in the funniest ways.
Oh, tell me about it. Okay, so one user asks, when can you start shaking babies?
Wait, what?
I know, right? But hold on, they weren't actually endorsing baby shaking. They were curious about when babies grow out of that reflex, where you can like jostle them without hurting them.
Oh, I see, like when they're not so fragile anymore.
Exactly. But it's interesting, right? It's like on the surface, it's about baby development, but deeper down, it makes you think about how careful we are when someone's vulnerable, how much we worry about keeping them safe.
It's true, like it's tapping into this primal instinct we have to protect.
Totally. And it reminds us that even the weirdest questions can make us think in new ways. But speaking of big life questions, there was one that really stopped me in my tracks.
What was that?
Someone asked straight up, what happens after death?
Wow. Yeah, that's the big one, isn't it? The question that's followed us since the dawn of time.
Right. And I just find it fascinating that even with all our science and technology, people are still searching for that answer.
It shows you how much we crave meaning, I think. Even when faced with the unknown, we want to believe there's something more.
Absolutely. It's like by asking the question, we try to make sense of something that's ultimately beyond our control.
Exactly. And while this subreddit probably won't give anyone a definitive answer about the afterlife, it does give people a space to share their thoughts, their fears, maybe find some comfort in knowing they're not alone in one.
Totally. It's like a collective exhale, we're all in this together, even the scary parts. Okay, ready to lighten the mood a bit.
Always up for that.
All right, let's move on to our next theme, cultural quirks and observations. This is where we see Redditors trying to wrap their heads around all the, shall we say, interesting things people do around the world.
I love this theme. It's like a crash course in cross-cultural communication.
Right. Like what one culture thinks is totally normal, another culture might find totally bizarre. And sometimes it takes a question from a stranger on Reddit to make us realize how much we take our own norms for granted.
It's true, like that whole personal space thing. It's different everywhere you go.
Exactly. Like one user asked, is staring common in Indian culture? And they were a little freaked out because their fiance's family, who's Indian, seemed to be staring at them a lot.
I can see how that would be a little unnerving, especially if you come from a culture where scaring is considered rude
Right, and it highlights how something as simple as eye contact can have completely different meanings depending on where you are in the world.
It's a good reminder to do your research before traveling, for sure. But it's not just about global differences, is it? We also saw questions about regional quirks within the same country,
Oh, absolutely. Like one user wanted to know, how strongly do Americans identify with their states of birth?
which is such a fascinating question, right?
Yeah.
Because America is so big and diverse, it makes you wonder where people feel the strongest sense of belonging.
It's like, are you a Texan first and an American second? Or the other way around? Or maybe a mix of both? I'm curious, what about you? Where do you feel the strongest sense of belonging?
That's a really good question, I'd say.
And we're back to those societal expectations, those unwritten rules about who we should be and how we should live. Which brings us to our final theme, societal norms and expectations. Get ready for some real talk, folks, because this one gets personal. And we're back to those societal expectations, those unwritten rules about who we should be and how we should live. Which brings us to our final theme, societal norms and expectations. Get ready for some real talk, folks, because this one gets personal.
It really does, and you see it right away in the questions people ask. Like one user asked, what's the male equivalent of a childless cat lady?
So specific, right? But it's like it hit a nerve. So many people were commenting about how there's all this pressure to fit in, to follow these paths that society lays out for us.
Totally, and if you don't, you get hit with a label, right? Like
Yeah.
the user even gave some options for that male equivalent. Crazy dog man.
Video game nerd, action figure collector.
Like, by even suggesting those, we're kind of playing into those stereotypes, even if we don't realize it.
Totally. Okay, another one that kept coming up was the stigma around gaming.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
One user was saying how they get judged for playing games for a few hours, but like binge watching a whole season of TV is totally fine.
It's interesting, right? It's like we have this hierarchy of leisure activities. Like some things are seen as more worthy uses of your time than others.
Absolutely. And gaming, especially for adults, sometimes gets a bad rap. Okay, ready for another one that always seems to spark debate?
Hit me?
Choosing to be child-free.
Ah, yeah, that one always gets people going.
One person even asked, why does saying I don't want kids make people, especially parents, so upset?
It's such a personal choice, but it seems to touch a nerve for some reason. Like, it challenges this idea that everyone wants kids or should want kids to have a fulfilling life.
Totally. It's like by opting out, you're making people question their own choices, their own values.
Exactly, and that can be uncomfortable. Okay, I've got one last Reddit gem for you before we wrap up. Ready?
Lay it on me.
Are kids' menus underestimating kids?
Wait, what do you mean?
So this user was pointing out how most kids' menus are just the same old chicken nuggets and fries. And they wondered if maybe, just maybe, kids are capable of more adventurous eating than we give them credit for.
Oh, interesting. Like, we're so quick to assume kids only want the bland stuff that we don't even give them the chance to try anything different.
Right. It's like those menus are more about what adults think kids want than what kids actually want. It's limiting their options before they even have a chance to explore.
It makes you wonder, are we underestimating kids in other ways, too?
Now, that is a question worth pondering, isn't it? And it all came from a simple question about kids' menus on Reddit.
It's amazing, isn't it, how these little threads can spark such big conversations about who we are, what we believe. It's like a peek into the collective mind of humanity.
Totally. And I think that's what I find so fascinating about this whole No Stupid Questions thing. It gives us permission to be curious, to ask those questions we might be afraid to ask out loud, and to realize that we're not alone in our wonderings, no matter how strange or specific they might seem.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So to everyone listening, what's your no stupid questions question? What's that thought that's been rattling around in your brain, waiting for the right moment to be explored? Don't be afraid to ask, to connect, to dive deeper into your own curiosity. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the wonderfully weird world of Reddit's No Stupid Questions.